Good afternoon. Dear colleagues, dear friends, I am Mal Hellam. I'm director of the Open Estonia Foundation. And first of all, I would like to apologize for pronouncing some sounds a little bit strangely because I had just recently a dental surgery. So I'm very sorry about that. Secondly, you see their headphones, and today we have translation into Estonian and English, and the debate and discussion will take place in Russian. But now I am so happy to see all of you here, and on behalf of the Open Estonia Foundation, it's my greatest pleasure to welcome you at the discussion of the event series we call Voices of Freedom. We had been announced that today's speaker will be Yevgenia Kara-Murza, wife of Vladimir Kara-Murza, a prominent Russian political activist and journalist who has been detained since April 2022. Since Vladimir's arrest, Yevgeny has taken on his advocacy work, speaking out truth about Russian aggression in Ukraine and political repressions in Russia, as well as her husband's case. Yevgenia currently works at the Free Russia Foundation, a Washington-based non-profit, non-partisan, non-governmental organization that seeks to give a voice to those repressed by the current Russian government and to inform international policymakers, media, opinion leaders about the situation in Russia. Unfortunately, due to the delayed flight, Yevgenia will not be able to attend today's debate. In Estonian, we have such a saying, õhusõit on ajavõit. In English, it would mean air travel is a time saver. As life shows, it's not always the case. But even so, despite everything, our conversation called Russia, Where to Next is happening. We are lucky enough to have today with us Yevgenia's colleague from the Free Russia Foundation, Nikolai Artemenko. Nikolai has established a community called Reforum Space in Tallinn, a platform for discussion on the necessary changes in Russia. Thank you, Nikolai, for being able to join us so promptly. And today we'll discuss future of Russia. Russia's aggression in Ukraine must come to an end. Ukraine will win, and Ukraine's territorial integrity will be restored. This will result in the collapse of Putin's empire. But the question remains if non-violent, non-aggressive, non-mad Russia is possible at all, or at least a country beginning to move towards such a change. We try to find answers to these and many other questions with our guest from Free Russia Foundation, Nikolai Artemenko, and our moderator, Professor David Vseviov. Thank you again for coming, and it's my pleasure to pass on the virtual microphone to you, David. Please, the floor is yours.
Уважаемые, дорогие.
Dear friends, unfortunately, Yevgenia is not here. She is there. But soon, thanks God, she will be here. Probably she'll manage to come to the end. Thank you again, Nikolai, for coming here. Thank you. And I think it would be reasonable, and I'll try to be the single representative of our team to ask Nikolai and Yevgenia some questions, and then we can discuss. Also, if Nikolai is not against also would like to ask, he would ask some questions. But I thought probably it's reasonable to start with Nikolai, who would tell us a little bit about his activities. Because as we talk about Evgenia, we know more or less what she's doing. But probably you know how Vladimir is doing today. Maybe you have more information than we. And probably you'll tell us something about Vladimir and then a little bit about your activities. And then we'll try to move forward. Yes, thank you. Well, I don't have any special information about Vladimir. So everything what is known about Vladimir Kara-Murza, there's nothing new. Unfortunately, he is in prison, and everything tells us that it will last long. We know each other already for about 10 years, and I told Vladimir many times, too, that it would be more reasonable or safer to leave Russia, but he always said that he was needed there in Russia, and even if he is in prison, he is needed there. So I respect him, and it's awful what's happening to him, but he is a hero. And for me and for many other Russians who left Russia. So first of all, I'd like to wish Vladimir health, because considering the events of the last years, being in prison wouldn't add health. And I call all up to write letters to political prisoners. It's very important. In our center, we organize such evenings, such once a month, to write letters to political prisoners. And this outside support for the prisoners is one of the most motivating things for people who are behind the bars, so that they are remembered and people know about them. So write letters to prisoners. So our audience is much broader than here, and I don't think that everyone knows what is the what was Vladimir announced guilty for. Well, in Russia, those who today criticize Putin and the regime, they are the most dangerous culprits and opponents of the power, because people who committed murders, they are punished not as strictly as those who are political prisoners. Today, people who are imprisoned for their opinion that they said something against the regime and Putin against war, they get they are charged for the same period as people who are charged for serious crimes like murders. Of course, we know about Vladimir Kara-Murza, Ilyashin, Navalny, Pivovarov, but not many of you know such cases as Sasha Skalichenko from St. Petersburg. This is a girl who is 23 years old, and she might be punished for 5 years prison. She organized a performance in one of the shops in St. Petersburg. She changed the price, the price tags for anti-war tags, and well, she really faces a very serious danger. So one thing is the imprisonment, and secondly, she has problems with her health. But our system doesn't take it into account. She is an enemy for the leadership of our country. And there are so many such cases in our country. To get to prison behind the bars in Russia, you can write. You can just write or post something in social media that you're against the war, or in the cafe you were just discussing some social topics, and you can be imprisoned for this. And within the last 6 months, there are many times more of such cases in Russia. After the 24th, I spent 14 days after the anti-war picket, and I decided to leave the country. After I was released from the detention place, I decided that I'd be more useful being free and can be more useful for anti-war movement. Because I'm not as known, as famous as Navalny, as Yashin, and the others who are imprisoned now, and I would be simply forgotten like thousands of those who are remembered today not so much. I asked about your organization, so please tell us something. Our main topic today is the outlook into the future. So first, about myself. I'm from St. Petersburg. I'm one of the founders of the movement Spring Vesna, which was nominated for the Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize, by one of the Norwegian MPs. In 2012, we organized the Democratic Movement Time. After war, I came to Estonia because I developed my startup, an IT startup, and in June we just decided to open a center for support of refugees from Belarus, Russia, and other countries. So Tom Colley 1. Oh, this is our address, and here we are the organizers of all meetings and pickets at the embassy. So since September we had 5 of them, and I know that some people who are present here were present at these meetings. We help political activists from Russia, Belarus to integrate in the Estonian society. We teach them Estonian. We help them to develop their projects. We have free Estonian courses twice a week, and so this is our plan for the future. And we also support different initiatives related to Ukrainian refugees. Yeah, many of you know that Isabella Ferry, where Ukrainian refugees live. They are accommodated there, and there are about 400 children there. Our partners, our residents, so our leisure center, Ogogo, arranges some activities on board. Yeah, so for 6 months they help Ukrainian children to integrate in Estonian society. So, and their work, the Ukrainians and who work there, and they help the children and their parents. So this is what we are doing in Estonia. We are about 60 residents. They are political refugees from Russia and Belarus. And the next meeting we'll have on the 24th of February. Please come. Thank you. How interesting is it? So I was listening to, and I was thinking about the next question. And I just wanted to give you an example. So this is an example of my talk with one of my Moscow friends, and I was thinking whether I would name his family name or not. He's a known oppositioner, and he's in Moscow, and I was thinking there might happen something. So maybe something is working there, because I'm in here, so I have nothing to be afraid of. But on the basis of my Soviet time experience, I would rather not say what his name is. We were talking and remembering the old times about 60s, and we were thinking about the future, and we were dreaming of the times when it all is over. And it happened. It ended up at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. So here in Estonia is in the form of independent Estonia, and in Russia it was the Hope for Democracy. And a week ago I was talking to him, and I understood that our generation, he is a little bit older than I, so I heard in his voice the lack of hope. Everything he was dreaming about, is again is gone. So you are again in the period when we were talking about the future, and when you are about 70, so his hope has just disappeared at all. I heard it in his voice. So, and I wanted to ask him, so with us it's more or less clear in my version, on his version, but what about the younger generation? This is the future, the question of the future. So it's very important for the history. There's plenty of books, and you can see it, how it all turns. This is the concentration of different versions. It's huge, but the mankind somehow wants to forecast and to hope for something. What is the hope? What might happen? So in some sense, these issues, these questions have no sense. They're not reasonable, but they're important for your generation. Well, of course, I cannot forecast anything, and I don't think that anybody here can do it. But I'd like to point out the following two things. The first, if the conflict ends and the power in Russia changes within the following couple of years, then there is a chance that all people who left Russia now, so all the creative young people with the ideas, projects, and ambitions who are now doing a lot of anti-war and pro-democratic acts in the entire world, they would come back. It's because I communicate with them, with people in the entire world, and 97% of them who left Russia now, they will come back. We will come back, and we will build a new democratic Russia, progressive, free of tyranny and dictatorship and of what's going on there now. But if it lasts decades, there is a huge risk that all these people would just disseminate and integrate in the communities and societies of other countries, and the new generation, which is growing now in the country, will change something. I am optimistic, and I hope, and we are doing everything so that we would be able to go back to Russia as soon as possible and to start democratic changes in Russia as soon as possible. And this is what Russians in exile are doing today in the entire world. The ideas of the young Russians in the world, they give us hope, and we know. I don't know how the power, the authorities will change. I don't know. But I know that when it all is over, we'll be ready. I know that there are people who will be ready to become the leaders, to organize democratic elections, and who are able to build, not from scrap, but from the point where we are now, to build new Russia. So I'm very optimistic, and many of my colleagues, friends, are also optimistic in the entire world, and I hope that very soon we'll go back home. It's a very interesting verb, to go back, to come back. Not long ago, I wrote an article, and I was trying to think, to reflect on the history, on the slogans, to change something, to change something for the new. How often they referred to the past. So we want to stop something what was built by somebody and to build the future in the version of the old, of the past. In the Estonian version, this is the restoration of independence, and this is what united us at the end of the 80s. We wanted to restore something what existed. So it was very naive, but everything was very clear for everyone. But if you think about Russia in the same, let's say, angle, this call to return to where would we, or what is left? Something what's a short period after 1917 and a short period after 1991. So there is nothing which would be clear for the mass, for all people, because who would say so? Today it's very bad. It's like a childhood. So because children or people usually think that when they were children everything was fine. What to offer? What to do, or how to change the country and the power? Of course, you can do it like the Bolsheviks did it in 1917, and maybe we should, or you should do this, and everything will be clear to everyone. So in many cases, the power has discredited all the tries of the beginning of the 90s. Well, do you have agreed upon what you want to come to return to? Well, yes, you're quite correct when you were talking about the founding meeting, which and the elections at that time, which was at the beginning of the 90s. But today, the main task of the opposition in Russia, this is the word which we are already tired of. This is the word to unite, because the Russian opposition, well, the term unification always comes with the notion of conflict. Now the main task of people who are outside of Russia, who do something for democratization and changes in Russia, they have to be united and to step out as a single front, not to pull the blanket on into different sides. So we want this or we want that. So I know different groups which wants to take the power. There are groups which want to split Russia into many parts. There are supporters of the parliamentarian republic and so on. And I think that all these issues should be resolved after we come to this point all together, and we can, so that we could unite our positions, we can organize a dialogue and how to change the Russian, let's say, situation. So there are a lot of different examples, a lot of different democracies in the world. Well, it doesn't matter that we didn't have a longer democratic period in Russia. No, it's not important. There are so many examples in the world, and we could take the one which would fit our people, which our people would like. But we first we have to change about 80% of different acts, legal acts, which have been adopted lately, and this is what is offered by Mikhail Khodorkovsky for many years, and he is still saying that Russia needs several years to clean up the garbage which accumulated within the last decades in the country, and to organize the new and democratic elections. Once in the history of Russia, there was such an approach, народничество, so going to the people. Do you have, does the Russian opposition today have such ideas? So we'll go to the people, to the field, to people. So we have a lot of different versions of what would happen to Putin this way or that way. But what about this version from the grassroots level to the top? Oh, it's not realistic at all, because the people are brainwashed in such a degree that it wouldn't work. But of course, you can use the TV. Well, here we have a very simple opinion. People who trust the propaganda, it's practically impossible to change their beliefs massively. I mean, widely. Some people, yes, they do change their opinion. But these are single cases. Billions are being invested in dollars invested in propaganda of Russia. It's a huge machine. People who today believe propaganda, who support the war, you have to understand these are not bad people. They're not people who have black soul, who want to run and kill other people. No, I don't want to say that they are the victims of war, but they are victims of propaganda, which massively have treated them, processed them within many years, within decades. Because if you go to some other cities of Russia, not Moscow and St. Petersburg, you would understand that people, they don't have any other source of information, but only 4 or 5 first keys on TV, buttons on TV. He gets up in the morning and turns on the TV, and here he hears the news, and Russia says that there are all fascists in the Ukraine. He goes to work and discuss this with his colleagues, because they heard the same on TV. And when he comes back home in the evening, the same information is coming from the TV that there should be a nuclear bomb thrown on Paris. So where from could he or can he or she get any other information? And this advertisement of private military companies, and this Z letters everywhere on kindergartens and everywhere. So in St. Petersburg, Moscow, you won't see it, but everywhere in Russia you'll see it. And some. So it means that with small efforts you cannot stand against this propaganda. But as soon as you give people another picture, give them a choice, the situation will change. I know people who came to Europe. They had some opinion about everything. So, and then when they came here, they understood that Europe is not like it is shown on the Russian TV. They knew that Europeans are peaceful people who don't want to attack anybody. There is no Russophobia and so on. So I've been living here for about 6 months, but I've never seen or faced a case of Russophobia, which is stressed on TV every day in Russia. And then there might be another question. It's more complicated. Can we treat this disease? Yeah, can we cure these victims of propaganda, so that Russians would come to the West, let's say, and will see something different? Well, I'll get to another topic a little bit. When we organized this movement Vesna, or spring, we started a social campaign. We said no to visas. We were standing for ruling out visas for young Russians, so until 25. So that the young people under 25 years old could go to Europe without a visa, and for 10 days, and within these 10 days they would learn what really Europe and West are. So the idea was just to show the young people what is really in the West, and they would come back to Russia and they would inform their colleagues and friends about the real situation in the West. And again, these friendly visits might help to get rid of the myth that Russia is only balalaika and bear and some dances. And now coming back to your question, I think yes, it's possible to change, but this process will be very long. Time-consuming if you don't switch off TV right away.
Why I am asking these questions, I think that people can forge their own future. In Russia, 100 million population, it's like a collective future. But if you listen to their different channels in Russia, you can hear information how many Ukrainians have been killed in the war, how many casualties. People are indifferent to that information in Russia. But in case a family gets back a coffin of their son or husband, then things change. What is the situation with these people who get back the coffins? At the moment, no changes yet in their opinion polls. But I think that by summer that correlation would be noticed. So far, actually, there can see some differences. People say we should have better weapons, better uniforms, better supplies. Yes, it may change into correlation in case their coffins will arrive not only in the families of officers or professional militaries, But if the coffins will arrive in just ordinary people in their ordinary families, and after new waves of mobilization at the moment, the hidden mobilization is going on so far. Yes, maybe people will change their opinions. For some people, their perished relatives will be heroes, but for the families where the young men were grabbed and sent to the front, and they will get the coffin of that person, the opinion may be changed. And then you can't just stuff the people and make them silent by giving them money. Yes, I think changes will take place in summer. Changes in opinions. What do you think? Everybody is concerned about their personal things. Should we be concerned and be afraid of something? Yes, of course. Until Putin is the leader, Europe and the whole world is in great danger. Unfortunately, our European partners, colleagues, American colleagues, for many years, they didn't want to listen to Russian opposition. We were telling them this person, Putin, is a danger for everybody. And friendly relationships should be curbed. What happened after the Crimea situation? Nothing happened. Their football championship was held in Petersburg, and different politicians came there and made photos together with Putin, had their visits there, shook hands. I'm not saying anything about Russian gas and oil companies and the villas of Russian oligarchs, which are scattered in all European countries. For many years, nobody was listening to us. But now it's the moment where facts are there and the world is endangered. I don't think that Russia will use nukes. And not because they don't want to do it, but it's not there anymore. It is dilapidated. But the economies of European countries will be poorer. And Russia has new plans for conquering Moldova, and I even don't want to mention these new plans. But yes, Europe will be in danger until Putin is the leader, until he has power. And you can't just relax and just watch chewing popcorn and watch what are the Russians doing there. You can't do it anymore. Now, I think it's a very interesting question. If we start to change things, now it's 2023. What started on the 24th of February last year, it's clear. 2014, the Crimea, it's clear. Let's return it, reverse it. But how long should we go into the history to reverse things? Because it's a system, not just one person. Replace some person with the other, but the system remains. How much we have to go, how long have we to go into the history to reverse things? And I think it's a big problem. In 1991, no value, no opinion was given on the Soviet system. And the system itself remained. Now, do we have enough power to change everything, to reverse things, give independence to Ukraine, Georgia, etc.? Or we have to change the whole system, give some opinion of the things committed by the system. I'm not interested so much in your own individual position, but what is your opinion about their widespread ideas among the opposition? It's very important for us to know, because on this, the future of us, the future of Europe depends on. I hear permanently Ukraine, Georgia, things have to be restored in Ukraine, Georgia, but wider. Yes, you have to evaluate things and give opinions and learn the lessons of things which have happened. But the other thing is, for the whole opposition, without the exceptions, and I think the audience can understand it, replacement of Putin by Medvedev, Tymoshenko, Shoigu, whoever, even Yavlinsky or Navalny, we are not speaking about them. This replacement has no meaning, because if you haven't changed the system, if you haven't rooted out those people who are to blame for the situation we have now, nothing will change. From the normal point of view, their elections were democratic. People had the possibility of voting, but nobody is describing the whole truth and the true situation. Some candidates were not allowed to ballot, and there were different manipulations used in order to have so-called right candidates on the ballot. We can have a long list of all the manipulations. But if you don't change the whole system, you can't have any changes. How to achieve that, I don't know. Maybe I'm not a competent person. I'm not a politologist. I'm a philologist. But if we take the present situation, I don't know how to reach any changes. And I'm desperate because of that, because I would like to go back home to St. Petersburg, my hometown. Yes, of course. I love Estonia. I'm very thankful to Estonian people that they have made us possible to stay here. But I am longing for my hometown, Petersburg. But I can't return to Russia until things change. Maybe there are questions from the audience. You are welcome.
Мал. Микрофон нам нужен, потому...
We need the mic because there is a broadcast going on. My question, Nikolai, you said that there is no Russophobia in Estonia among the Estonian people, but some somewhere you have still faced Russophobia. You hinted political level. This is very interesting for me because Russophobia, this is a kind of myth expressed by Putin. Well, maybe it's not just Russophobia. I have faced myself Russophobia on the bureaucratic level. Quite recently, I was flying from Tbilisi to Tallinn, and the transit was in Warsaw. And I have a Russian passport, and I was not allowed to take the transit flight. I was sitting in the plane already in the 25th row, and the company, flight company person, officer, came to me and said, "You have to leave their plane." I was very, very much astonished, but the person said, "We cannot allow you to go to Estonia and leave Poland." I had to leave the plane. This is a minor thing, but things do happen sometimes. Visa issues for Russians, including in the Baltic countries, it's a very tenuous question. People who have not expressed any political ideas, who were just working hardly in Russian, for example, developing IT codes. But they are, deep in their heart, they are against things happening in Russia. But if they come to the Baltic countries, they cannot get visas, entry visas. It's not Russophobia, this is a bad word, but it's a special attitude to Russians here. And on the everyday level, so far I've been driving a car with Russian number plates. Nobody has stopped me because of that. I have received some remarks on their mirror. I have an Ukrainian flag exposed. I live in Lasnamäe, and sometimes somebody may approach me and tell what I'm doing here, but actually no discrimination. I haven't faced it in Estonia. I have met people from the Estonian Reform Party, Estonian 200 Party, and they have said that they fully support those people who fight for democracy in Russia, and they respect us. But they say, actually, this is pre-election campaign time, and we can't publicly declare that we support all the Russians. That would be a murder case for us, for politicians, suicide case. But things may happen.
Thank you. It has always happened on the everyday level. So there are different reasons for this, and even it is more active in the crisis situation at the governmental level. Nothing like this exists in Russia, in Estonia, sorry. Raud Rebane, I have such a question. Me and David are people with a lot of experience. We remember in the 70s, 80s, the economic situation was so bad that it started to impact the ideology. So it means that a pair of jeans was much more important than all the decisions of the Communist Party. How long in Russia is what is the situation with the economic situation in Russia so that it would start impacting, influencing the ideology? So is the difference in the living standards very different from Russia? When will it be very different from the European? Of course, I understand that Moscow and St. Petersburg and the other regions of Russia are different. Do you have a feeling that once there comes a meeting, there will be a point when people would decide for economy? Yes, some prices have grown up, but global changes that people have now food or people cannot afford what they could afford before the war. So they still have the possibility to buy a car, to rent an apartment, and to go to a restaurant. So people who had this opportunity before the war, they have not lost anything. And I'm very sure that Russia, if nothing changes globally, tomorrow, let's say, so that Russia will follow the Iranian way. So it will start developing its own technologies by Chinese cars and put the logos of local cars. I've been to Iran several times, and I understand what's waiting for us, and this is the simplest and most vivid model which engages today the Russian society. And people in general get used very quickly to everything. Even in the first months, you could see on Instagram. So the McDonald's is now the Vkusная Точка. Now everyone is visiting this restaurant. So nothing changed. So earlier they didn't buy the Chinese cars like today, and now I think that soon half of Moscow will drive Moskvich produced in China. So nothing will change, and it will grow and grow, and then there will be Russian internet, YouTube, Russian Google, Yandex, ban of everything. I think YouTube will be banned by summer, and will be kind of a Iranian. So we'll have this Iranian model. So we repair our planes in Iran, so because they can do it, and our teams sent already to Iran to learn how to repair Airbuses and Boeings. Yeah, well, everything will be okay. And Nikolai, you're optimistic because some people say there will be a North Korean version. So Andrea saying Iranian version. So I'm kidding. Here, please, you. Mikhail Trunin. When we're talking about Iran and North Korea, there is one problem. In Iran, there's a president, Ayatollah. And the president is elected democratically, but Ayatollah is sitting all his life. So in Russia, if you want to have this Iranian model, so Putin will try to combine both positions. So they have no ideologies. So do you think, is it possible to build up a Iranian model without ideology? Because of the ideology is made in Russia for Putin money. So Putin let sit in the office for all his life, and show this on TV. In North Korea, there is also ideology, Chuche. And in Russia, there are a lot being written and said that there is no practical ideologies. How to build up a closed country without ideology is difficult to imagine. Well, a good question, but probably Iran was not the best example. But if to talk about the ideas, the idea of Chuche of North Korea is more logical. Because in Iran, Ayatollah and ideology, they, within the last 10 years, they are less and less important. No. And today ideology impacts the masses very much. And today in Iran, the young people, 80% of young people today are very democratic. They don't support any ideology. In Russia, I think it's very simple. The ideology is very simple. Russian world, Orthodox religion, we are the strongest and surrounded by animals, and Putin is our Ayatollah whom will follow. So, what do you think? Should the opposition form or build up something which could be called ideology in Russia, instead of just to offer it, instead of this which doesn't exist today in Russia? So the word ideology is not the correct one, it's not the best one. Simply we have to give people the choice. If people see how it can be in a different way, so then something can change. 80% of Russian citizens, they have no foreign passport. They have never been abroad, but 6-7% have never visited any other countries but Finland, Turkey, or Egypt. So the system simply is arranged in such a way that the possibility is provided, given not to everyone. If there is a possibility, they will change something. So I think the best ideology is the ideology of choice. Please.
I'm Jim from Georgia. In English. So first of all, I want to say that I like when Mr. Navalny and you are fighting against Putin's regime, but let me say that I have some doubts because during 2008, Russian invasion of Georgia, Mr. Navalny addressed Georgians as grizoni, which I hope you agree is very much insulting. Moreover, he said that if he becomes next president of Russia, he will not take back this Russian military bases from Abkhazia and Tskhinvali region, so-called South Ossetia, the territories of Georgia. So tell me, I'm very much interested about this person. Tell me about his ideologies, about his views, about future of Russia. Is it any likelihood that one day, if Navalny wins, we will see the different faces in the president of Russia with the same imperialist ideologies and the dreams of spheres of influence, especially in the post-Soviet spaces? Sorry if this question is strange for you. So, thank you.
Да, спасибо. Во-первых, я бы хотел...
Thank you. First, I'd like to impress my gratitude to the people of Georgia, because they, despite of everything, they have accommodated so many Russians, Belarusian activists who run away from Russia, Belarus. About Navalny now, so I'll disappoint you because I myself am not the supporter of Navalny, and I don't belong to his, let's say, structures, because although I do respect him very much and support him, and I follow what he and his team are doing, but unfortunately, I cannot answer what he will do, what he will behave, or how he will behave if he becomes the president. The question is not in the fact what he will do if he becomes a president. Let's hope that someday the moment comes when he will be registered or start running for the presidential office. And then we can ask him what he will do with the military bases, with Abkhazia and Crimea. I'll be very much interested in his answers. Well, unfortunately, I cannot give you the answer to the question. Thank you. You wanted to ask something? Vasily, my name is. I'd like to come back to the previous moment about, people who Nikolai was talking about Russians who had now passports and they could not, their visas, and the people who could not go to the other countries and see a different way. I just want to ask, do you have some educated people among your, let's say, community, people who speak English, who were in different, who visited countries abroad, who visited different countries, worked in international organization, who at a definite moment said, Crimea is ours. And another question, well, Crimea is ours. Why isn't this an ideology? So these moments, please comment on it. Well, among my friends and acquaintances who would say suddenly, Crimea is ours, I don't have such people. Well, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I think the ideology is something which is aimed to the future, because, you can build the euphoria for today, but ideology is something for the future, like let's build communism. So ideology is something like a purpose, a goal, which you'll never achieve. The Third Reich, yeah. So this is the future. But Crimea, it does exist already. So Crimea is ours, as this is the part of the ideology. So Crimea is a symbol. Today it's the propaganda is very broad about Crimea is ours, Donbass is ours, and then Narva is ours, and then half of Eastern Europe is ours. So this is the getting together all the Russian grabbing of former Russian territory. So this might become an ideology, or it might be the beginning of the ideology. So, and we can see today, the larger we are, the better. The more territories we grab, the more countries hate us, the stronger we are. Unfortunately, this is the ideology of our country today. Hello, I am Andrei Makaric. I work at the Tartu University. My question is related to the wish to understand what is behind the slogan, no to war, or we don't want war. What do you think, which part of people in Russia or in Europe who position themselves on the anti-war area? So who would agree with the qualification of this operation as a war, the genocide, and who would be for the quote on the military culprits and the payment of reparations. Who is for? I think those who left Russia and who participate in anti-war activities, they support all your points. Among people who are today in Russia, many, I think, are those who would support these ideas. But another thing is that they have never been asked about it. So they don't have this general full picture in their heads about reparation, the court, and so on. Using your question, I'll make a bridge with the following: How could European countries, or what would they do? Or how would they act to decide to let the Russian to European countries? So whether they consider just to ask all these questions to a Russian person, and on the basis of their answers, the border guard would understand if this person supports Putin or not. When I was in Borispol, in Kiev airport, about half an hour I was asked on questions, and they asked me about my attitude to Putin and to politics and so on, and they let me in. But for those who are outside the country, of course they do support these points. But unlike who was, I don't know who, Georgy Yavrinsky, it was party Yabloko, Apple. A couple of days ago, he wrote an article for peace, and where he described his position and the party Yabloko. He was writing that both sides should cease fire and start negotiating. And I'm more than sure that the majority of those who are in anti-war meetings, they do not support this story, that let's stop, and would say that Russia has to withdraw its troops from the Ukrainian territory. So the first is to withdraw from Ukrainian territories. So all our people whom I know, they are all for it. And I hope that the others also share the same idea. Vladimir Lenin said, let's turn the imperialistic war into a civil war. Yeah. Does the opposition in Russia consider this issue theoretically or practically? Well, some part of the opposition does consider this issue, but frankly speaking, I don't believe that kind of a civil war is possible, because it's not the time. It's not the beginning of the 20th century. We are much further in terms of humanitarian issues. The people inside of a country would wage war against neighbors inside of the country. It's impossible. But some representatives of our, opposition, it's the word which unites everything. But as I said, opposition is very, very different in different parts, different groups. So some Russians in exile, they do consider the option of the civil war. They want to get power. I am pacifist by nature, I support diplomatic solutions. But anyway, these civil war issues, they do exist.
Karmo Tür. And my question has several layers and steps. Concerning ideology, I think it is there, and it is called imperialism, Russian variant of imperialism, and it looks into the future. Our hope for the fact that maybe Russians, when they can see what's going on in the rest of the world, they will get rid of imperialistic opinions and ideas. I don't think so. Russians are living in different countries in Europe and in America, Canada, etc., and they still think that we are the power, the strongest power in the world. And the idea after something, the free elections should be carried out, and then things will change. But now my skeptical question, do you think that it's possible to root out that imperialism from the souls of Russians? I don't agree that this story with imperialism and that kind of upper idea which is flying around somewhere. I don't believe in that. Putin and the company, they think out anything in order to stay in power. Their only task in the Kremlin is to cling to the power. They have robbed so many values, so many things that they have no other way out. They may think out of imperialism and anything else in order to unite people around the idea that Putin has to stay in power forever and ever. Until it works, you can call it anything. I don't think that people are sitting there and they are thinking of the ideology. No, things are much more simple. We have the power, we have to cling to it, and there are people who need to be fed and provided with money and houses, etc., properties. Yes, of course, there are many examples, but they are in minority. When people move to European countries or US and they still keep their opinion, but I don't understand, for example, in Estonia, there are so many people who are pro-Russian, even pro-Putin. But actually, I know it's not the majority. I know many examples when people move from Russia to any other country, including Estonia, and they change their opinion. Now, would Russia be ready for ideological changes and real democratic elections? After it has happened, then we can say that real, true thinking could prevail. Thank you. A question about imperium. This is not something Putin has thought out or created. These imperialistic attitudes have been present in Russia for long years. It's not their Putin's tendency. It is something in Russia's DNA. How can we overcome that? What to do with that? It's difficult to say. Actually, I don't believe in the DNA. Let's take the North Korean people. We can't think that in their DNA is the belief to obey to Kim Il-sung. In the 90s, nobody wanted to grab anything. I don't know how to answer to your question. I don't think there is any scientific explanation that there is a kind of special DNA in Russians to play balalaikas and do something else. I think it's not a correct thinking that Russians have a special DNA. Thank you. One more question. Actually, in the same direction. If you allow, I would like to say, first of all, express my gratitude for this discussion. I think it's very important to organize such discussions. Now, about Putin's ideology, there was a question arising. Fortunately, we don't watch Russian TV anymore. We can't get that awful Russian propaganda. But due to my work, I have to watch these channels. And now I can say that in these media channels, they say Russians are something special. We have special values. And Putin has expressed the idea that we are very special. But we know about several wives and several girlfriends of Putin. But the main idea is, despite the fact that we have a difficult life now, but we can be the best in the world. We can show everybody that we are the most powerful. Yes, this ideology, maybe not everybody is supporting that ideology, but very many people do. As to imperialism, I agree with Nikolai and say, I have lived the whole of my life in Russia. And I have worked with sociology. And I think I can understand that people are concerned of their own lives. And if we talk to people in Russia, then very many people, more people are very much concerned how they get food on the table, how they can school their children, etc. Yes, Putin and other people, Patrushev and other people, they are dreaming of restoring the former Soviet Union. But if you take the Russian people, whether the leaders can impose their ideology to all their ordinary people, you shouldn't be so sure. In 2014, after the Crimea and the stories of Maidan, everything was very fresh and new. In 2016, Russian people were asked about their Ukrainians. The opinion was that Russia should have normal relations between Russia and Ukraine. There should be friendly relations. 53% of respondents and only 7% in 2016 had the opinion that Russia and Ukraine should be one country. This is very interesting.
Мощи телевизора.
Yeah, it's a contradiction. First you were talking about the power of TV, and now then you say that it's impossible. So they managed to sell it partially to the audience, but that so when once it works, once it doesn't. So today the numbers, the figures are different, but I don't think that this, the majority of the Russians, if not the majority, then the propaganda doesn't work. It's never so that propaganda always works 100%. Once it's stronger, once it's not. Once they manage to push their slogans and so on, it's always floating. I don't think that Russians have a kind of a gene or something of imperialistic, let's say, feeling. So I'm, for example, a Russian. I don't want to grab any territory. So Nikolai, we don't want to attack and take over anything or occupy any territory. So there are partially or part of people who are subject to propaganda and to listen to it. And the problem of Russia is that the problem is in the dictatorship. And we were talking about many centuries. There was the Tsar dictatorship, then the Soviet dictatorship, and now Putin dictatorship. So we are fighting or struggling for democracy, and we understand that Russia will not wake up the next day, but only in democracy changes can be possible. So I do understand it, but first at the beginning you gave the example of the ideology, and then you were talking how this ideology works in the version of television. Yeah, and I'm very happy that you told me that it doesn't work 100%. So, yeah, it doesn't work for 100% of the audience. I trust these figures, these numbers. Everyone has his or her opinion. Putin is supported by 30–40% of our population. So, and I'm very scared that a third of the population has not understood what's going on in the country. But on the other hand, it's not the majority. So this topic is very interesting, and especially for Raul, who is sitting next to you. It's very good question to him. How the propaganda is working or acting. Thank you very much. We have time only for one question. So you were first. I saw your hand. Yes, you wanted the mic. Yes. And Vasily, once again. I have such a question. A question and opinion, and also to the question to Marlen, to the participants of discussion. Do you think that to have the discussion Russia where too there should be Valery Zaluzhny here on this stage, and Jens Stoltenberg, so they're the head of the army of Ukraine and the head of NATO. This was the first part of the question, and the other part is to Nikolai. Do you consider the scenario that, and your attitude to it, that in the war, the anti-Putin, anti-Russian coalition wins, and Russia will be ruled and governed by the coalition of friendly states under protectorate of UN, so the external crisis governance. No Russian governing solutions. Don't know for which period, but anyway, for the crisis period, the crisis or anti-crisis management will be introduced. So So I'll answer the first part of the question. We spoke to Stoltenberg and Zaluzhny. They couldn't come today, but in the future we'll try. So about the external management, whether it's possible and if I want this. I think it's possible. No, I don't want it. I think in Russia there are enough of smart and people who would be able to set up a temporary government who would be able to govern the country. I have such a question. I'm the head of the Ukrainian Congress in Ukraine, in Estonia. And then my question: why the smart people could not interfere, could not protect Russia from totalitarian regime? Why couldn't they prevent totalitarian regime? And about the Russophobia, you were talking about the bureaucratic red tape, bureaucratic Russophobia. Russia started the awful genocide war in Ukraine. I've been now to Ukraine 10 days in Lviv district. Within 3 days there were 3 air alarms. So that you would know, I know it. Why is such an attitude to the Russians, to the Russian society? Why don't you feel any responsibility for what your country has started? Because there is such a notion, the collective responsibility. Thank you very much for the question. A good question. I am always ask this question about the smart people. Why haven't they prevented what has happened? They were trying, but they didn't succeed, but they failed. Well, there were some tries. So somewhere they were too weak, somewhere there were wrong decisions, but I can tell you that these smart people, some of them are now in prison, some of them are killed. They have made everything possible to not to let what's going on now, not to let happen what's going on now. The collective responsibility. I don't feel my mistake in this. Within 15 years, when I am involved in political activities, I think I have made everything, or almost everything, what a person can do to prevent it all. Therefore, I don't share the collective responsibility for what's going on today in Ukraine. And many people who left today in Russia. I understand very well the Ukrainians. I was thinking, what would I feel if I were in their shoes? And many of those who left Russia, they have made a lot for the things which are going on now in Ukraine not to happen. So Evgenia Karamurza and her husband and many other oppositionists, so in hundreds of political prisoners in Russia, they also would agree in many issues with me, and that they would have done a lot to prevent these events, and they risked their life for their ideas. And of course, I understand that Ukrainians are entitled. They do have the right to think that all Russians are a priori guilty for what's going on in Russia. But I don't share this point of view, and I don't consider myself to be responsible for the war in Ukraine. Thank you, dear friends. Thank you for the for the questions, for your opinions. Thank you, Nikolai, because it's not so easy to agree to be here instead of Evgenia on such a short notice. The issue of collective responsibility is very complicated. Talking about this, I was talking about the fate of gypsies, of Roma, and Jews in Germany. I've always supported the opinion of personal responsibility of a person, because you can just move away from the main thing of a person, because what we have in our heads is most important thing. Once again, thank you. Once again, thank you. And I think if you have any questions, Nikolai will talk to you in the hall, because there is still coffee served, and you can just ask Nikolai something. So thank you once again. Slava Ukraini.